Forbes writer Paul Tassi is running the now tired narrative that a show is getting review bombed because there is a significant number of people who disagree with him about the show and primarily disagree with him on a moral basis. So what does he do? He runs this tired narrative claiming the show is getting review bombed. However, we have evidence that clearly indicates that is not the case and in fact points to the contrary, that the show is not getting review bombed. There is actually manipulation happening on the other side. Roll this up over at fandompulse.com. You can find the link in the description below. So Tassi wrote this article titled HBO's The Last of Us review bombing surpasses the game's review bombing. It's a horrible headline. Anyways, he goes on and says, Tassi claims that the show's second season is being review bombed, given the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes has declined to 45%. I actually think it's at 41% now when I checked this morning, compared to the first season's 87% audience score. Tassi specifically blames the culture war, writing the anti-woke war. There's just no way around this. It's a factor. Exceptionally mean critiques about Ramsey's appearance. Hate based on the same-sex romance between Ellie and Dina, which bloomed in full last week, and more generally covering entertainment for a living. I've simply seen this sort of thing escalate even over the last approximately 3 years since season 1 and wildly ramped up after the recent election. You can easily peruse the negative reviews and see these complaints. So obviously he is taking a moral stance here, and you can see that with him promoting the disordered LGBTQ plus relationship that the show is trying to push off as normal. Not only do they do that, we know that they were also trying to push gender ideology by having Ellie refer to herself as a dad. I know a bunch of people are saying, oh, it's just a joke. They're just referencing it. That's the point, right? The point is they're trying to make it a joke so they can more easily get into people's minds that this is just something that is normal, when indeed it is not. It is obvious propaganda and programming. And Paul Tassi is really mad that people don't like his disgusting immorality, which he makes very clear he is a proponent of here, I think. I think his flowering words here make it very clear where he stands on that issue. Tassi's entire analysis, as I said, is based on Rotten Tomato scores, which as of writing currently sits at a rotten 41% on the popcorn meter, which is the renamed audience score. However, if one looks at scores on IMDb, it is apparent that review bombing is not happening for season 2. In fact, it looks like at least one of the Culture War episodes that Tassi cites received higher scores than other episodes. The second episode, where Joel is killed, has a 9.3 out of 10 rating. You see it right there with 48,000 reviews. That's 16,000 more reviews than the first episode. It is 28,000 more than the third. So, review bombing? Review bombing? I don't think so, because let's actually look at it here. Oh my gosh. 32,000 of those 48,000 reviews, 67% are 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10. But it's review bombing is happening. No, review bombing is clearly not happening. We see this with this episode. The opposite is obviously the case. The numbers here indicate that these people flooded the reviews for this episode to make it have that 9.3 out of 10. Even IMDb recognizes this, because you can see it actually has an 8.7 unweighted mean. I think that's probably higher than what it should actually be, because you can see the first episode had a 7.4, third episode was a 7.1, fourth episode 6.5, and then the fifth episode is currently a 7.8. Obviously, that just aired last night, so not that many reviews in there, 5.1. And you can kind of see where the reviews are at. First episode, 32,000. Kind of makes sense right there. And then, obviously, if we want to go over here and look at the ratings, you can see that the first episode, which aired... where is it here? We got to skip ahead to 2025 here. So the first episode had 938,000, and it declined with the second episode to 643, third episode at 768, and then fourth episode 774. So it makes sense that you would see this first episode here having a much greater number of reviews, given the fact that a lot more people watched. And then obviously it clearly tanked with the second episode if we're looking at just the linear cable ratings here, because we don't have the Nielsen streaming numbers yet. They haven't released that, and then kind of did pop back up with the third episode of 768, and it's kind of remained relatively flat there with the fourth episode. The fifth episode numbers have not come in yet, and that kind of aligns with what we see here on IMDb, right? Big numbers for the first episode. This actually should have gone down. It didn't. It went way up. So again, I think there's clear manipulation happening here. And then we have the drop with the third episode, and then the fourth episode, a slight little increase, which is again what we saw with those cable ratings. And then obviously, I think it's too early to see here on this one, given the fact it just released yesterday. So I think this is clear evidence here that this whole narrative that Paul Tassi is trying to sell about a review bombing is just false. It's fake. He's clearly made it up, and he's trying to manipulate people, and he's doing it because he doesn't like that people are calling out the immoral behavior that this show is trying to propagandize onto people. So I think it's much more likely that the audience just simply do not like the story choices made for the second season and are clearly expressing it over on Rotten Tomatoes. I think that is exactly what is happening. We saw this again with the part 2 video game too, right? People didn't like the choices that were being made in the video game, and I think we saw a significant number of people not purchase part 2 and were heavily critical of Neil Druckmann and Naughty Dog and what they did in that game. And so you saw less people actually playing the game, and I think we're kind of seeing that here as well, and it's obviously, again, reflected in these review numbers here. But Paul Tassi has to sell this narrative because he wants to protect the immoral LGBTQ plus agenda, which, even as he admits here, is obviously under attack, as it should be, because it is indeed immoral and it should be outlawed. But let me know what you guys make of this. Let me know in the comments below. Remember to always be charitable, especially to each other, and to always, always speak the truth.
Why would you be afraid of the people? Why are you not afraid of God instead of man?